fantastic.
Okay, all right. Like to call to order the Avalon City Council meeting of Tuesday, April 19th. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm happy to announce that we don't have to have a moment of silence today for anybody. Please be seated. And if we may please have the roll call.
Councilmember De La Rosa.
Here.
Councilmember LaBelle.
Here.
Councilmember Ponce.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cassidy.
Here.
Mayor Marshall.
Here. And do we have any announcements or written communications, sir?
Not for me at this time, no.
Okay, did you have any?
I do. Some election reminders. Election information for the June 7th election can be found on the City of Avalon website. It provides a list of qualified candidates, the 2 ballot measures, important election dates, and a link to check your voter registration. If anyone is interested in being a write-in candidate, the period to pull your paperwork is April 11th through May 24th. Please call the clerk's office to schedule an appointment to pull and review the paperwork that you'll need to, in order to become a qualified write-in candidate. Lastly, the June 7th City Council meeting has been moved to Wednesday, June 8th due to the election.
Great, thank you. Department head reports.
Good evening, Bob Greenlaw, Director of Public Works. Have 3 items tonight to report on. Casino Way restrooms roof. We're finally done.
Yay.
As of this moment. Yeah.
Yay.
So the roof at the Casino Way restroom is officially finished. The last custom-made flashing received and installed this week. The work was completed by City Public Works crew in its entirety. The actual work moved along at a pretty good pace, but the flashing is what held us up over COVID. So, and those were custom-made on the mainland. And the roof is actually a composite product that has the appearance of the clay Spanish tile, but it will not crack like tile will, and it has a 50-year service life. So thanks to the Public Works staff for a job well done on that.
Great.
And please go and take a look at it. It's really impressive. From the top also, so don't just look at it from the street. Go up there and take a look from the top of it. Lovers Cove Pocket Park. I'll let Dave Hart talk about the project at Lovers Cove. But for the next steps for Public Works out there at that project is really the parking layout and freshening up the roadway markings. So you see that will expand the limits of that work. And thank you to Community Services and the Public Works staff for the great improvement for the community. Had a lot of good comments so far on that. And then an update on 2 projects. We were supposed to be at this agenda with the Crescent Avenue Hillside and the Green Pier repairs. We anticipated we'd be reporting the bid results, but these projects, the bid results are delayed and the new dates are scheduled. For the Crescent Hillside, we anticipate that we'll be able to make a recommendation at the May 3rd meeting, and for the Green Pier, the June 8th meeting. So we had some community members that wanted to be updated on that. So we wanted to provide those results tonight. Any questions for me? Thank you very much.
Wait, just real quick, when is that date we're having a Phase 2?
So we're moving that to the end of May. Last night I got notice that our architect is not going to be available for that date that was in at the start of May there. So we've got to move that out. Okay. And so we'll be searching for that new date. It'll be likely in that last week of May.
Okay.
Okay. If that fits everybody's schedule.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
And I have one question. Where are we at with the curb cutouts for the corners?
Okay, so the revised plans are done and that's ready to go out to bid. I need to get it to the county CDBG, show them the bid packet. But yeah, we just finished up the revised set of drawings that it now includes 2 more ramps at Descanso. So 2 ramps each on 3rd Street at Catalina and Clarissa, and then we added the 2 at Descanso because we had some additional money.
Okay, yeah, because I've been watching people struggle to get across the street.
Yes, that's going to be a really good improvement.
Yes.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Lover's Cove looks great.
Yes, it does.
Those bathrooms look great. I was in there too.
Good evening, everyone. Warren Carr Starr from Avalon Harbor Master. The city end float is back from Larson Shipyard and ready for the summer use. The float will be installed at the end of the Pleasure Pier and will most likely go into service on or after the first week in May. I'll keep you posted on that. Weather has been a challenge in April, as each week we have experienced small craft advisories or gale forecasts. The effects create challenges for cross-channel carriers and the cruise ship tendering operations, as we've seen the last few weeks. Gale warnings go up into effect again tonight through tomorrow morning, and so expect possibility of disruptions to the scheduled services. Here are the numbers since my last report, April 5th. Patrol moored 394 boats for a total of 1,686 nights. Patrol took 1 accident report, assisted Baywatch 1 time, assisted and responded to 1 minor medical. Patrol warned and advised 13 persons of municipal code violations. Patrol issued 1 citation for a vehicle with no city sticker parked on the mole. Patrol did 141 security patrols of the port facilities. And last thing I wanted to say was, report on was that April 12th, Harbor Patrolman Kurt Cameron was honored by the California Boating and Safety Officers Association. He was given the West Dot Award for his tremendous dedication and commitment to the boating community and to the California Boating Safety Officers Association. Avalon Harbor Patrol and the city can be very proud of this accomplishment.
Yes, very nice.
Thank you.
Any questions of our Harbor Master?
I have one question because it was brought up to me. I know that we discontinued doing the die tabs during COVID. Do you know when we're planning on bringing that back?
So that's a great question. I'm planning on trying to get that going by Memorial Day weekend. I am making sure that we're able to do that with the COVID situation and our insurer.
Right.
Great.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. But as soon as we do resume, I will let you know.
Thanks,
Thank
Warren.
you, Lauren.
Good evening, Joe Badali, Sheriff's Captain of Avalon. And we've been fairly busy throughout the past 2 weeks. And something of note that got a lot of interest in folks inquiring about was the traffic incident we had on the south side of the mole with the golf cart that went into the ocean. Happy to report that all 3 members that were in that vehicle did not sustain any injury, did not require any follow-up care at the hospital, and very happy to report that everybody was okay, which could have been tragic, but had a great end result. Also, a lot of positive feedback we're getting on our new vehicles that are through town, and they seem to be very well received. The deputies like driving new equipment, and the added features that the new vehicles have over the old are a great benefit to them and increases their safety as well.
And I asked one of the gentlemen, one of the officers, and it was because you have a cage now, so they can't get kicked in the back of the head.
There's a partition there to protect them
Right.
for any combatant.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I would love to see those new vehicles doing a sweep around Hog's Back 3 or 4 times a night if possible, and
Yes.
around Three Palms and Hog's Back. I sent some pictures on that were reported, but I think it's a matter of spring break, and you know, I don't know. I guess we probably need to talk as a group about how to mitigate all of the trash from the kids that party up there, because it looks terrible.
Yeah.
Both spots are prominent walking spots for visitors as well as our locals, but
No.
yeah, I'd love to see the new
Yeah.
cars going around there too.
Absolutely. And in addition to the trash, but we also have public safety concerns that can bleed from, you know, what's taking place up there, and
Exactly.
we'll
Yeah.
definitely increase patrols up there.
Yeah. Great.
Awesome, thank you.
And I'm going to go back on my little drum. Electric bikes have become the bane of Avalon. I witnessed a mother with 2 children on her electric bike. Probably 5-year-old on the front handlebars, 8-year-old on the back bike rack. None of them had a helmet, and it's just a lot of that going on. And more for me, it's more. I don't want to get rid of them. I don't want to be that person.
Yes.
But it's just the accident happening and the medevac that's going to happen and the liability that the city may face because they did this. It just drives me crazy. So anything you guys can do to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
Just
Definitely.
and the kids are still doing this down the street.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll address it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie's with CR and okay, I'll admit her then. Okay. Evening, council. Sorry about that. Matt Baker, Finance Director. I just wanted to provide a brief kind of update on the timeline for kind of the upcoming budget presentations and discussions. Currently, the plan is tonight to give a brief overview of kind of where we stand as far as current year reserves, so revenue estimates and reserves heading into next year. So we're going to kind of touch on focusing on mostly the general fund and the harbor tonight. Hopefully keep it to 10-15 minutes. The next meeting, my goal is to discuss O&M budgets for kind of the major funds and departments, and so that'd be fire, public works, and by O&M, operations and maintenance. So we'd be talking about staffing at a high level, as well as contract services and kind of maintenance accounts as well. So that would be at the first meeting in May. At the second meeting in May, my plan would be to focus then on sewer, saltwater, and solid waste, O&M and capital projects in those funds, and then have the the first meeting in June, the June 8th meeting, to kind of discuss any of the changes and feedback that came out of the three discussions, tonight's and the other two meetings. So any changes we make. So one of the challenges of doing this way, it's going to be kind of a shifting and moving budget as we go. So that June meeting, I'll kind of update any of those changes, as well as discuss the CIP for the general fund and the harbor in particular. And then hopefully, if all goes well, we can present a budget for June 20th for adoption without having a special meeting, unless kind of throughout the process we feel we need to have one. But kind of my hope and my goal is that by breaking it up into these chunks, we can cover all the topics without having to do kind of the 2-hour, 3-hour study sessions that we've done in the past. But if you know, throughout the process, if we think we need to have that, or if council would like to have a more in-depth study session, we can definitely do that. But my goal was over the next 4 meetings to kind of break it up into 4 chunks and kind of do it with the meetings.
Sounds good.
Other than that, we did post February visitor-driven revenue numbers, another solid month. February's an interesting month because it probably fluctuates more than any other month that the city has. It's very weather driven and dependent. And it was a strong February, and it measured up well even against other busy Februaries. So that you can find that on the city website, cityofavalon.com/finance, if you want more information. Other than that, unless there's questions.
Questions? I think we're good. Thank you.
All right.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. On Saturday, April 16th, we brought back, after 2 years, our annual Easter egg hunt at Descanso Beach. We had 4 groups go, 0 to 3, 4 to 7, 8 to 11, 12 to 18. We had over 3,000 Easter eggs on the field, but no matter how many you collected, you got a goodie bag full of Easter candy and toys. We handed out over 300 goodie bags throughout the day. Hoppity the Easter Bunny was gracious enough to take photos with our youth, and the city would like to thank Descanso Beach Club and Catalina Island Company for providing such a beautiful venue for the event. Update on Verges. Frank Rojo has signed the contract and now is in agreement to run Verges. We had LA County Public Health come out today to
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh. Frank Rojo has signed the contract.
Oh, okay.
And is now in agreement to run Verges.
Great.
We had LA County Public Health come out today to inspect the kitchen and the grounds. She has given Mr. Rojo the green light to start running the business with a few minor repairs that he can fix while still trying to run the business. Mr. Rojo is projecting to open up within the next 2 weeks. Yes, it is true, we had to cancel Springfest due to restrictions of LA County Public Health. We are still trying to work with them so we can pursue doing other events, hopefully like Fall Fest. But so right now we've had to cancel. But one event we are going to have and continue to have is Cinco de Mayo on, you guessed it, the 5th of May, this Thursday. We will have local folkloric dancers led by Brianna Morones and a live band. We will have local food booths that will be provided by local restaurants, and therefore being in compliance with county health. Festivities will start at 4 p.m. and finish around 7 p.m. This Saturday, February 23rd, at 11 a.m., we will be honoring 3 of our valued citizens who have given a life's work unselfishly, helping to shape our Avalon youth's lives. We will be placing a plaque on the wall of the Avalon Kids Park, right over here, for Jim Felix Sr. of baseball and softball, Nancy Delahunt for her years with Girl Scouts, and Coach Steve Hall of basketball and a cultural connector. Please join us for a ceremony starting at 11 a.m. this Saturday. Being the weekend of Earth Day, we are also honoring Tony Zeiler, aka Mr. Tony, for all his volunteer work in keeping Avalon beautiful. We will be putting a brick in Avalon Kids Park, right over here, in honor of this work. We should all aspire to have the same passion for the town we love. And you can share in his day at 11 a.m., just right after the volunteer plaque ceremony. You can also follow in his footsteps on April 24th, the next day at 9 a.m., when we have our community cleanup day. So that's at 9 a.m. So you come on out. We'll set you up with the trash bag and a picker, and we go around town and clean up the town in honor of Mr. Tony. And Mr. Tony might be joining us and leading the way as well. T-ball signups are open, with the first day being May 14th. Age groups are squirts 3 to 5 and sluggers 6 to 9. We are having a welcome back to sports entry fee of just $20. You can sign up now at recreation.cityofavalon.com. In preparation of summer day camp, our camp coordinator, Jenny Diaz, has put out a poll on the Recreation Facebook page and the Catalina discussion page for parents to give their input on activities that they would like to see be part of summer day camp. We are looking to stay current with activities with the youth that the youth are engaged with. So please place a comment on either site and help make your child's experience better. One thing I just learned today, I was in a meeting with recreational leaders throughout LA County, is they are looking at maybe bringing mandates back because of the current rise in Omicron B2. And so they're going to make that decision April 21st, what those policies might be, and then enact them in later May. So kind of keep your eye out and look out. They're calling it MTV2, which is mask, testing, vaccination, and the last V, can't quite remember, but ventilation. So for indoor sports and stuff like that. So they're asking that we might end up having to test once a week with the kids, but they will provide all the testing for us in this, so at least it won't come out of our pocket. But be aware that it may be coming back. Update on Lovers Cove. Just like Public Works Director has said, the public work crew under Jeffrey is absolutely amazing. How quickly they get something done. I said we were hoping to get this done by June. It's not even May, and it's almost complete. We just have a couple of touch-up things to do. We got to get another set of lights for the crosswalk. Like you said, a little touch-up paint for the crosswalk, as well as bike rack and marking for parking, and a couple extra benches.
Looks good.
So I'm really thankful for the public works crew for that. They are truly, I believe, the unsung heroes of this city. Mm-hmm. And then one more thing. We did have a violation, vandalization at the skate park this last weekend. It got worse progressively. It started off with just people throwing beer bottles, people throwing the trash around. And then on Saturday, they had actually turned over, it has to be a couple people because it was pretty big. They turned over some of the ramps. And so that's hard to do as one person. So we're still kind of searching out. We don't believe it's a skater because they've kind of taken ownership of that place. But it has escalated. So we're looking at getting wireless cameras for that spot, and then maybe we can use those wireless cameras elsewhere if we needed to.
Yeah.
But it did not happen yesterday, but it progressed from a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we're just kind of keeping an eye out for that right now.
Sorry to hear that.
Dave, I have a question for you. There was a question out there in the community regarding the lights at the basketball court.
Yes.
Do you know, are they on a timer of a
Yes,
sort?
it actually was fixed today. John had gone out, John Gilbert had gone out and rewired some portions of it, and then was able to fix the timer. So it should be on tonight. I will double check that when I go.
It was
home
on
tonight.
last night.
Was it on last night? So.
And what
there we
is
go.
the timing on it?
It will come on because it's on a photo. It's on a photo cell. So he had to get it. So the timer, something to do with the timer in the photo cell. He got that to work, and so it will come on when it starts to go dark, and then we have it set to go off at 10.
Oh, okay,
So-
perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Any more questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
City manager report.
Thank you. It's been mentioned a couple times, but I did want to mention again because I did get to go out there and see the final project at Lovers Cove, and they've created an outstanding spot out there. So if you get a chance, go out there and check it out. Public Works, again, I repeat everything that's already been said. They did a great job. They did it quickly. They did it on budget. Couldn't ask for anything more. Also, Dave Hart, I want to compliment him and his staff. I went out to saw some of the Easter egg hunt Saturday morning. The amount of time they spend for 45 seconds of chaos. Nobody can appreciate how much time they spent leading up to that, but I think everybody appreciated it that was out there. It was a beautiful day. The fire chief is at the Lake Arrowhead Fire Chiefs Conference. That is why he's not here, but he did send me an email, wanted me to read a few comments that he would have presented into the record. First of all, he had 18 kids last Friday at the high school for their CPR program. They had to cap it, so he's looking to do another one. So these were 18 high school age kids between 10 and 17. He's looking for a date, so he will advertise another class as soon as he can get that arranged. So that's outstanding. The community CPR will be April 28th or May 19th at 5 p.m. at Avalon Fire Station. Cost is $40. Email a chief or text him at his number on the website if anybody wants to attend, so they can start filling up those spots. Other than that, that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Great. Thank
Dave,
you.
did you say the date was April 28th?
It is. He has two, April 28th and May 19th on here.
Okay, thank you.
City attorney?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Council member reports.
I have just one, just that will be attending Cal City's Community Services Policy Committee meeting next Thursday. And David, I'll let you know when I get the link so you can, David behind David, so that you can join also.
Lisa Yesenia?
Nothing for me tonight, so go ahead, Lisa.
Just wanted to share if anyone is needing to renew their DACA applications, they can do so online. The Long Beach Immigration Rights Coalition has a post on Instagram today with some details, so if you need help with that, please check out their site. And we'll be attending Island Connectivity Group meeting before our next council meeting. And then also just wanted to wish Dave Hart a very happy birthday coming up soon in another week and a half. Happy birthday. It's going to be a good one. Maybe or not.
Oh, it's one of those
It's
ones with
one.
a zero
It's
at
a
the
big
end.
one.
Ah.
That's right. He's turning 30.
Oh, that's it?
Michael?
I
That
did.
was it?
I'll tack onto that, David, so you don't feel so bad, and wish my husband a double that coming up this next week.
Okay.
Had several meetings, myself and Councilmember Lavelle, regarding broadband, and both with the consortium members individually and with AVX, and nothing new to report at this time, but we will be having another meeting before our next council meeting.
Great.
And that's all I have.
Good. And I don't have much, just minutes with the mayor tomorrow at 4, and that's it. So we're going to go right into a public hearing, I understand. Audrey, are you going to start it off?
I can introduce her. Good evening, council and mayor. We are lucky that we have our Mamie here in person, finally. It's been a blink or two. So I'm going to let her take it over, and she's going to read the required language, and then you guys can open the public hearing, accept comments, and then close the public hearing.
Okay. Welcome back.
Good evening, council and mayor. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Armine Saint, and I'm a director at Metro, and I'm a project manager for TDA 8 Unmet Needs, and that's what I'm here for this evening, to conduct a public hearing. Before opening it up to public comments, I would like to read a prepared statement that explains why we're doing the public hearing. The public portion of this meeting is held to hear testimony regarding the allocation of Transportation Development Act, TDA Article 8 funds. The California Transportation Development Act, enacted in 1972, provides the major source of state funds to support public transit services. 1/4 of a cent is collected as part of the statewide retail sales tax in this county and placed in a local transportation fund, TDA 3, 4, and 8, which is used to support public transportation within the county. The TDA funds are divided as follows. TDA 4 recipients receive approximately 91%, TDA 3 is capped at 2%, and TDA Article 8 receives approximately 7% of the share. By statute, most of the money, the 90% share in LA County, goes to support the operation of our regional bus service, Metro, and the municipal operators such as Long Beach Transit and Santa Monica. These services are funded in part by TDA Article 4. Additionally, some of the funds are used to support facilities for pedestrians and bicycles. This is known as TDA Article 3 for the 2% of the share. Article 8 of the TDA requires that a proportional share based on a population, and this year is approximately 7% of the share of the sales tax revenue, be allocated to those areas in the county that do not have Metro service because they are located outside of Metro service area. These areas are in the Santa Clarita Valley, the Antelope Valley, and Catalina Island. Transit needs can be reasonably met through an expansion of existing transportation systems, by establishing new systems, or by contracting for services. However, if there are no unmet transit needs which can be reasonably met with these funds, the funds may be used for local public streets and roads purposes. While the purpose of these hearings is to determine how TDA Article 8 funds should be allocated, your testimony about transit needs may be useful to local decision makers who are planning possible uses for Proposition A, C, and Measure R and Measure M funds. The Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority holds a public hearing each year to determine what transit needs exist in your community before recommending how these funds should be allocated. Like MTA staff will compile your comments along with the comments made at all the hearings, including written comments received before the deadline. The Social Service Transportation Advisory Council, composed of local residents and social service providers, will consider your comments and make a recommendation to the TDA 8 hearing board. The hearing board will make a recommendation to the full Metro board. The Metro board will act in June to make the findings about the use of Article 8 funds in your community. The LAC MTA board's recommendation will be forwarded to the state for review and approval. If you wish to submit written comments in addition to or instead of testifying verbally, the record for all hearings will be kept open for 2 weeks after the conclusion of the public hearings. Written comments must be received by May 3rd, 2022 for all affected areas. Your written comment should be submitted to the following address: Armine Saint, TDA Article 8 hearing, Metropolitan Transportation Authority, mail stop 99-21-3, 1 Gateway Plaza, Los Angeles, California 90012, or sainta@metro.net. The public testimony portion of the hearing will now begin. Please remember to state your name and any organization you represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing. Do we have any comments?
I have no comments.
Okay. Did you get any input at all from anybody in the community? Anybody respond at all?
Are you asking me?
Or, yeah.
Yeah. The comments wouldn't come to me. They would go directly to Armine, so it's been posted on our city website.
Right.
With her contact information, so I guess you can answer that. Did we get any comments?
I have not received any emails, and mail is, we still have 2 weeks for the mail, postmarked. So I'm hoping I'll get comments through mail or email later on after today.
Yes,
So,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And if there's any questions from me about how we use the money now?
That was going to be a question about how much we get and how you break it down. Thank you.
Well, sure. It's based on taxes. It usually hovers around $170,000 a year, more or less.
Okay.
140. Oh, I thought it was a lot bigger.
Maybe it will be.
Maybe the upcoming one is bigger. I don't know. And we use that money to help offset the cost of our dial-a-ride and fixed route service. And so when we cobble together the TDA Article 8 money along with Prop A, Prop C, Measure R, Measure M, and then we also get $300,000 in Prop A incentive funds, which is the same pot of money that the commuter subsidy is funded through. In our fare box, it almost breaks even. So
almost breaks even.
Almost breaks even.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Still a little bit out of the general fund, but we are doing dial-a-ride for all ages. In case anybody has forgotten that, we haven't changed that yet. We started that during COVID. And we are continuing on. And Mayor, you had mentioned that you'd like to see maybe every couple of months some ridership data. So you just let me know, or let Devin or the city manager know when you'd like me to come, and I'll
Great.
have.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I'm digressing, but for the dial-a-ride, they have to sign up.
Yes, you do have to sign up. Absolutely.
Yes.
And if you have trouble signing up, Lucy is down there to help you, and she's been promoted. Transportation Concepts have done a fabulous job of promoting within and staying in contact with us, and she's a fluent Spanish speaker, so she can help you if you have a language barrier or any questions at all.
Yeah.
And then if you're over 55, it's open to anybody. You don't have to live here.
Right. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, if there are no comments, how about Council?
I was going to ask if we could maybe post the mail and email on our social media platforms just to see if we can get more comments in.
That would be great. Thank you.
Good.
The only question I had, I know that how we spend the money here in town. How is money allocated outside of the city for the rest of the island? They're part of unincorporated Los Angeles as well, but don't have an entity besides maybe the county that's representing them. Is there any funding going to the rest of the island, or is it just within the city?
As far as TDA 8 is concerned, it's just for the city.
Okay.
I can't talk about the other fundings. I'm not, I don't have that information, unfortunately. But this particular funding is just for the city.
Okay.
So if you're asking for funding for like interior access?
Right.
Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Well, I'm
or-
just wondering if anyone is receiving any fund allocation, if we're receiving this as part of the areas that are not served by Metro, that part of the island is not served by Metro also, and while we don't represent them,
Right.
they should likely be receiving some of those funds as well for some level of transportation. I don't know who would actually reach out for that though, so.
I don't know. I think it's based on population, so if it was gonna do that, then it would dilute our amount.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I also think there's an issue with the private roads, but I could be
right.
wrong on
Okay.
that. Yeah, I think we did check on that. So I
that
think the
makes sense.
private road portion of it is problematic.
Okay.
I think we tried to get the roads paved with FAA money a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and the private
Similar
roads
issue.
were also a barrier there. So-
Okay.
But also,
Thank you.
do they get to participate in the cross-channel carrier subsidy?
The whole island does.
That's what I
yes.
thought.
Yes.
Okay, so that's great.
Yeah, no, oh yeah, no, I know, and I was just wondering specifically about this fund, if this fund covered anything for anyone out in the interior, so. They can still access the same programs that we have in town, so that's good at least, so,
Yeah. If you live on yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone can sign up for the Dial-A-Ride. Anyone could ride the bus. Yeah, it's open to everyone.
Okay,
So-
very cool, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I think we're good.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you.
I believe I already closed it. So that's how we do. We just move on. Okay, oral communication. This is an opportunity for people in the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. You would be limited to 2 minutes and no action will be taken. Do we have anything?
I do have any comment.
Okay.
This is from Jim Lutjohan. Thank you, Mayor Marshall, and the many community members who joined the Love Catalina Island on a recent outing to White's Landing, where we removed 9,000 invasive sea rocket plants. Tomorrow, be sure to tune in or set your DVRs to record California Live on NBC, which airs at 11:30 a.m. to see an episode with content devoted to Catalina Island. The show was recently on island to film the episode and is part of the Enhanced Spring campaign that includes billboards in Southern California, digital ads, TV ads, and some newly wrapped Catalina beverage trucks that will be branded with graphics to promote island travel as they traverse the roads of Southern California. Catalina Pride 2022 is slated for all day and evening on June 18th, 2022. Events are in the works for Wrigley Stage to include 2 DJs and a drag performance. Additionally, a Pride Walk will take place from Wrigley Stage to Casino Point. Catalina Beverage has available Budweiser products that are rainbow branded for June, and a portion of those proceeds from sales of those products will support LGBTQIA charities. Businesses are encouraged to participate with supportive decor, special offers, and activities that will welcome LGBTQ visitors and residents as well as allies. More activities are in the works. Ads will be placed in digital outlets and with Edge Media. A special thanks is owed to Supervisor Hahn's office for their sponsorship of the event. If you are interested in joining and or sponsoring the celebration, please contact me at jim@lovecatalina.com.
Very nice. Okay.
And I just want to say, I apologize, Jim, for not attending the meeting today. I just remembered it just now.
You heard his voice. I heard his thing. Okay.
Pride.
All right, we have a presentation by Matt Baker.
Evening, Council. Again, Matt Baker, Finance Director. This presentation, the goal of it's going to be focusing on our revenue estimates for the last quarter of this year, really last third of this year, and then looking at where we're looking at as far as reserves heading into the next budget year and some kind of initial estimates we're looking at as we're working with the departments and planning our budgets for the upcoming fiscal year. So again, on this overview slide, all I've done here is pull some of the highlights from our budget and fiscal policies that were adopted last year as part of the budget. The first one being on the top, the city should operate under a structurally balanced budget. Again, that's where the recurring revenues are sufficient to cover all of the recurring expenditures. Revenue estimates should be conservative to ensure adequate funding. There is in the budget document, if you read it, that they also shouldn't be so conservative that we're consistently way underestimating. I know the next slides you're going to see that looks the case. It's been a challenging year to predict, and so I always going to err on the side of caution and conservatism in those estimates. But the goal would be in future years not to have the same variance between the estimates and where we had budgeted at the beginning. And the third one down is the city should be transparent concerning its forecasting approach and underlying assumptions. So my goal there is to try to show you kind of my thought process and rationale, and that way, if there's information I'm not considering, I can take that feedback into those estimates. As we get new recurring revenues, some of the things we should be considering as far as how we're going to spend those new monies would be first focused on making sure those new monies are covering fixed cost increases. So whether that's labor-related MOU increases or contracted CPI increases, things to those effects. We need to make sure those are being covered with the new recurring revenues first. Then second would be replenishing those reserves to establish targets. The third, funding significant long-term liabilities. So that would be something like our OPEB liabilities or our unfunded pension liabilities. Replenishing internal service funds for vehicle replacement, deferred maintenance is fourth on that list. And then lastly, any other discretionary type expenditures. And the last bullet there is just to let you know that this is going to be kind of an evolving process. We haven't really had this conversation this early in the year before. And so as new numbers come in and new information comes in, I may be revising the revenue estimate. So that's just more to caveat. This is how I'm feeling today, but that's going to change between now and when we present the budget for adoption. So this chart here is a breakdown of our general fund revenues. So reading it from left to right, it is our fiscal year 19 actual on the farthest left. And the reason I use that year is that was the last year that wasn't impacted by COVID. And then moving the left to right, it's fiscal year 20 actual, which was impacted in the last quarter. While it was only 3 months, fiscal year 20 saw some of the more significant decreases in revenues just because of the nature of the restrictions that occurred during that time. The middle column would be fiscal year 21, so that would have been the fiscal year that ended last June. Fiscal year to date, this would be revenues we've actually received in the bank as of March 31st. And then what I've done is kind of put two ranges as far as estimates, low and high. So the first one on the list is TOT from hotels. That's our largest single revenue source. And going to the far right column, to date collected, so that's collected from March 31st, but that's really for February activity. So the March revenues wouldn't be paid until sometime during April. So the March numbers aren't reflected. So with essentially 2/3 of the year, we've already collected $3.8 million. And that is higher than what we collected all of fiscal year 20. And that is very close to what we collected in pre-COVID non-impacted year, fiscal year 19 of $3.9 million. So what I have right now is an estimate on the low end of TOT for hotels coming in this year at $5.1 million. To kind of put that to scale, TOT for both hotels and vacation rentals in fiscal year 19 was only $5.4 million. So it is a significant increase even on the low end of my estimate. And I have a slide to go in how I came up with these numbers. And I could see that number potentially being as high as $5.6 million for hotel TOT. Vacation rental saw similar growth, actually slightly higher growth than hotel TOT. And then going down the list, the sales tax estimates we get from our sales tax consultant, at least the high-end estimate we do. So I looked at kind of prior year activity and came up with that low-end estimate. A couple things just to pull out and make note. If you see fiscal year 19 actual property tax and why it's significantly higher than some of the other years, we received that PAE, that permitted admin expense, as part of the successor agency administration, and that was $750,000. And we didn't receive that in fiscal year 20 going forward. Another thing just to kind of pull out, just because it stands out compared to the other years, at the very bottom you see other revenues in my fiscal year 22 estimate. That includes the ARPA state and local fiscal recovery funds. So there's $880,000 we are going to receive We've already received the first half, and we'll receive the second half this fiscal year. And so that's where that number is coming from, and that's why it's such significantly higher. So you can see that there's a range of between 13 and essentially 15 million we could see in general fund general fund revenues, excluding any grant revenues. And the real two big drivers, one is the ARPA funds we're receiving in the current year, but really TOT has made a bigger impact than even what those funds have done. So again, looking at how I came up with the kind of the low end estimate and the high end estimate, and I realize on the combined I probably should have taken out the year. So that's July through June, and then going 19-20 kind of throughout the year to get to this year's estimate. So my low estimate, what I did is I looked at our fiscal year 19 actual and estimated what if all we did was hit our pre-COVID fiscal year 19. Keep in mind, 8 months through this year, we've exceeded fiscal year 19 every month. So I figured as a low end of the estimate, if all we did was meet that pre-COVID number. And then fiscal year 22 on the high end estimate, what I did is I looked at what we did last year, which was our prior best March through June on record. And so using last year as kind of the high end. So if we match what we did last year this year, that would be the high end of the estimates that I'm using. Again, March through June of last year, and particularly April, May, and June, we really saw unprecedented growth in our TOT revenues. That was driven by occupancy, but largely also by room rates. And so that's how I came up with the range of anywhere between 7.2 and 8 million for TOT going into this year. Again, if you compare that to other fiscal years, even last year, which was a record high of 6 million, this would be another 30% on top of what we did last year. So it's really unprecedented, the revenue growth we're seeing in TOT. And I have a slide later on that I think is going to highlight part of the reason for that increase. So this slide here is a breakdown of our general fund reserves. So going into the budget last year, we would have estimated where we thought our reserves were going to be going into this current fiscal year. And we had 5 million as our estimated beginning unrestricted fund balance or beginning reserves. We actually entered the year with 6.7 million in our unrestricted fund balance. And really there's two main driving factors for that. When I came up with the estimate as part of last year's budget, I estimated that we would finish April, May, June with 70% of pre-COVID revenues, and they actually came in those 3 months 165% of pre-COVID revenues. And so when I make these estimates, I don't try to be that conservative. I just never expected to see the revenues we saw, particularly kind of rolling out of the restrictions in April of last year. Part of that also is with the harbor. The harbor did a little better than expected, and so that was less monies that the general fund would have to then support the harbor with. So then moving down, I have the estimated operating revenues that were included in the adopted budget, and then I have the operating revenues based on my low-end estimate. So you can see I pulled out the non-recurring revenues from that, and so that's the ARPA monies as well as some of the planning grant monies that we've received. And so that's where the 12 plus the 900,000 gets you the 13 million that we saw on the prior slide here. And if you see the operating expenditures, why they've increased is because we do have two pass-through revenues, the hospital sales tax portion, as well as the 22% of the chamber monies that's tied to the TOT number. So what I did as far as the expenditure side is I just assumed what if we spent everything that we had in the budget. So the estimate there is just based on what we had budgeted. Our goal always is to come in under budget, but just if we spend the full budgeted amount, where would that leave us? As you can see, we, as a net operating revenue, that middle highlighted column, we were planning to have $1 million in net operating revenues, and we need those monies to then support other funds that are subsidized by the general fund, as well as to pay for capital improvements to the extent they're not grant funded in the general fund. And going in, even on the low end estimate, we are looking at 2.7 million in net operating revenue. And then after the grant and capital projects, again, what I did there is I just estimated what if we spent 100% of what we were planning to on capital in the current year. That likely number will be lower, so less money coming out of reserves than what's even projected here, because some of the capital projects we had expected to spend significant amounts of money before June 30th, and now it likely we won't see those monies spent until the next fiscal year. And so then on the low end, we could be entering the upcoming fiscal year with general fund reserves or an unrestricted fund balance of $8.6 million on the low end. And then on the high end, using those high end estimates, it could be as high as $10 million, which is, I never thought I'd be standing up here just a year after that and reporting this positive news. And I want to take a second to reflect on it, because it did take a lot of sacrifice from a lot of people at the city, but it has helped us recover quicker than I ever thought we could. With that being said, just as kind of a reminder, while the general fund reserves right now are projected at the end of the year to exceed the targets we had set forth in our budget and fiscal policies, this was also achieved because staff were operating at reduced levels with pandemic-related reductions to benefits in effect. Also, a key point, the city hasn't historically fully funded its vehicle replacement or its OPEB liability costs. There are significant capital projects and infrastructure needs, and as going through staff today, Bob had a list of things he's going to be bringing forward in the next coming weeks and months. And so there are significant capital needs beyond what our grant funding currently is. And then the other thing, as we talk about some of the other funds may require some loans or subsidies to the general fund in order to meet their infrastructure needs without requiring those infrastructure costs being passed on in the form of rate increases. And so while the last slide was certainly positive, there's still a lot we need to do to get us to where we want to be as a city financially. So looking at the harbor, and I don't want to dwell too long on this slide, but looking at Fund 103, and the table shows fiscal year 19 kind of net operating revenues or operating losses. So we had a budget that was basically operating at break even, if you will, in fiscal year 19. So this is a year not impacted at all by COVID. We saw operating revenues not quite meet where we had budgeted. And as a result, we had a draw on our harbor operating reserves pre-COVID just to operate for the year. The chart on the right, what I did is I looked at our harbor operating funds audited financials going back 10 years. So this would also include fuel dock activity in the chart, not in the table, but in the chart. There wasn't an easy way to pull that out. And as you can see, in 2012 to say 2016, the operating revenues were more or less in line with our operating expenditures. Part of the reason you see the spike in 2017 has to do with how certain pension liabilities and pension expenses are recorded. But even if you were to take out kind of that actuarial or accounting expense that wasn't a cash expense, if you will, our operating expenses were exceeding our operating revenues. And a lot of that had to do with we were seeing our operating expenditures increase year over year of, say, 5%, but we weren't necessarily seeing the revenues grow at the same rate. The positive on that is we have made a lot of tough decisions in the harbor, and we are in the process of righting that ship. And you can even see in the last year, fiscal year 21, a year that was impacted by COVID, our operating revenues did exceed our operating expenditures, even in a difficult COVID year. So again, similar to the general fund, looking at the harbor fund's operating revenues moving left to right, I have the fiscal year 19 actual, so that again is a year not impacted by COVID. And then kind of the major revenue sources going from the beginning down. Cross-channel wharfage, two numbers just to pull out there. The $2.4 million we saw in fiscal year 19. If we hit our estimates, where I think we will for the rest of this year, we'll finish $2.56 million. So this is only the operating portion of the wharfage. So a portion of wharfage is dedicated to operations and a portion is dedicated to capital. So even though we did increase the wharfage in 2019, from an operating revenue standpoint, it's the same 75% of the first $2.50 going into this number. And so you can see this year we are estimating our cross-channel wharfage revenues to increase by 5%. From the pre-COVID 2019. So again, we were budgeting those numbers below pre-COVID 2019. So we'll be even better positioned when it comes to our reserves heading into the year, but we're not seeing the same, 30%, 40% increase over, pre-COVID numbers in most of these harbor revenues. The mooring revenues have been very strong even throughout the pandemic. And then the one revenue I'll touch on later is cruise ship wharfage. You can see we're going from $600,000 a year in cruise ship wharfage and a whole fiscal year of no revenues. And what's also kind of lost from that chart is we probably had another $300,000 or so in fiscal year 20 that we were estimating for cruise ships from March to June that we didn't end up having come in. So it's a bit hidden when you just look at it compared to 19, but there were some additional cruise ship monies we were anticipating in the harbor's budget.
Matt,
So,
I'm so sorry.
Yep.
Can I ask you a quick question? Are the pier and tideland rentals the leases?
yes.
Okay.
So that would be any of the businesses that rent from the city at the mole or along the pier or along the waterfront. So again, a similar chart. I didn't do the low to high end estimate because there wasn't the same range of possibilities I felt in the harbor. So heading into the budget year, we had a working capital balance of essentially zero. We were trying to get it as close to. And that was really zero because we were anticipating that the general fund was going to have to have a long-term loan to the harbor. But given the April through June we experienced, we ended up booking that as a due from or a short-term revenue because we expect the harbor is going to be able to pay off that within this year, and that's factored into these numbers here with the operating revenues that we're estimating and the operating expenditures, assuming 100% of the budget operating expenditures meet budget. We would be looking at a net operating revenue of almost $1 million in the harbor, and that would negate that negative working capital balance, and we'd have a positive working capital balance for the harbor. Again, very positive. I didn't think we'd be able to be having this good of a conversation this time, but just also to kind of put it into perspective, if our target was a 6-month operating reserves or 6-month working capital reserves, for the harbor, we'd be looking at a number closer to $3 million where we're estimating $400,000. So certainly it's great to be where we're at, but we still have some ways to go to get to where we want to be. So it's been very difficult trying to estimate where revenues are going to be heading into next year. There's a lot of uncertainty with new variations and whether or not new restrictions are going to come with them. There's unrest in the world, which may lead to some travel decisions by consumers. So there's a lot of changes, and it's going to be difficult, I think, with any accuracy to really predict. And so again, I'm going to try to be very conservative with my estimates this year. But one thing that I think is pretty impressive is if you look on this chart to the left, what that is, and that's from Visit California. It's a breakdown of total visitor spending in the state by calendar year. And so you can see in 2019, the last full calendar year, not impacted by COVID. That's what they use as their benchmark of 100%. 2020, the first year impacted by COVID, statewide visitor spending was down to 45% of the kind of pre-COVID number. 21 did see some recovery statewide, with the spending about 2/3 of what we had seen as a visitor spend in the state compared to COVID. And then again, what the Visit California was predicting was the current year revenues to get to about 89% of the pre-COVID levels, and then reaching 100%. I couldn't find the chart to do this with, but a lot of the drag is partially due to decreased business travel. So there's business travel to California included in these numbers. It's not pure tourism. But in comparison, what I did is I put our city's visitor-driven revenues next to it, and you can see, and did it based on a calendar year. And our 2019 visitor-driven revenues I used as the baseline of 100%. And you can see in calendar year 20, our revenues were down about $4.5 million. So they were down about 33% from where we were at pre-COVID. Again, that's doing a January to December calendar year. As you can see, January to December of 21, our visitor-driven revenues exceeded our pre-COVID 2019 revenues, which is pretty remarkable. But again, it makes my job forecasting what's going to happen next a little more difficult, just because there is such a we seem to be outperforming the state and by a considerable amount. One of the interesting things in kind of looking at particularly our vacation rentals and the growth we've seen in our TOT revenues from vacation revenues, I've been doing some kind of research, and there was an interesting survey and study done that found 40% of the vacation travelers surveyed that were staying at a Airbnb or a short-term vacation rental stayed at one for the first time during the pandemic. So they're really seeing a shift or an increase in travelers' interest or comfort levels staying at a vacation rental type property. A couple things they cited as possible reasons as to why was the ability to socially distance more in the vacation rental setting, as well as the ability to more easily work remotely. So it'll be interesting to see if, as those concerns maybe shift, whether we still continue to see the same growth in the vacation rentals. But I thought it was an interesting chart. And another interesting chart that came out of this survey was just showing that people are extending the length of their stays because of that ability to work remotely. So it'll be interesting to see if possibly we see more people choosing to vacation and work remotely in Avalon. But it's just some interesting things I pulled out that I thought I would share.
Mm-hmm. And part of it too is the children weren't going to school, so
That-
they could bring the whole family with them and do
That is definitely part of it with 2020 and 21, that the schools, so that could change, but again, it just shows that there's a lot of change in consumer habits, which makes it just a little more difficult to predict. So what I have here is the same chart that you saw before with an added column for fiscal year 23 budget. Again, these are some initial numbers, but it's kind of what we're using as kind of our target baseline as we're looking at planning our O&M and our capital budgets going into the year. So the big number right now, I have $5.7 million for TOT for both hotels and vacation rentals combined. You know, that exceeds every year, but for 21 and 22, where we had $6 million and potentially $7 to $8 million this year. Again, this number may be there's a number of things we're looking at. I have spoken with Jim just preliminarily, talking about what trends he's seeing as far as bookings and changes with hotel operations or hotel operators. But kind of my thought was to see where the budget shakes out as far as the O&M and the capital budget, using this as a revenue estimate. Again, these numbers might change. The sales tax number I pulled from our sales tax consultant. We will be getting a new estimate from them sometime in April, so that number may change based on their new information that they're looking at. But again, you can see that the other revenue number dropped significantly, but it's still quite a high number, and that's because that does include some planning grants that are outstanding, and that's why that other revenue right now in my estimate is still higher. So you can see right now in next year's budget, I do have the budgeted operating revenues exceeding fiscal year 19, but not by a whole lot, and that's largely due to, in 19, we did receive $750,000 that I mentioned before in property tax PAE monies that we won't be receiving in 23. And the reason why I also have the property tax estimate going down from 1.8 million to 1.5 million is there is a county deferral repayment that was increasing on an escalated basis, and so next year's deferral repayments can be slightly higher than this year's deferral repayment, so that's why the estimate there is lower. But this is kind of what we're looking at as using our baseline as we're preparing the budget. These numbers all could change before we present it for adoption, and if you do have feedback on any of these numbers, we can definitely take that into consideration and make changes if necessary between now and then. This was just kind of putting something down so we could start on our planning for next year. So you can see the total budget would be about a 22% decrease from what we're estimating to receive this year, but factored in that 22% is the $1 million we did receive from the rescue plan funds, which we won't be receiving in next year's budget. Similar breakdown for the harbor. Again, I didn't want to set the cross-channel wharfage to exceed our fiscal year 19 actual because that dollar amount hasn't changed. So the only way we would see increased revenues is if we have more visitors in fiscal year 23 than we did in 2019. And while I certainly hope we do, and that's the case, I want to make sure we're setting a number we feel confident that we can hit. The other number that changed significantly, if you're going down the list, is the transfer fees. I'll start with that one, and then I'll go to cruise ships. Transfer fees also is pretty difficult for me to predict. Some years it's as low as $70,000. Some years it's been as high as $376,000. And so that's a fee that's charged on the transfer of ownership of a mooring. The city collects, I believe, 5% of that price. And it's, some years we have significant movement as far as ownership in mooring. Some years we don't. And so I try not to rely on, setting too high of a number there, as it's really out of our control, more so than even other revenues are as far as what we can expect to collect. And then the biggest change, obviously, is cruise ship wharfage. So you can see we went from $600,000 in fiscal year 19 to $611,000 in 20. And I did discuss that we did miss a quarter of the year, and so that's why you didn't really see any growth between 19 and 20, because the per passenger rate did increase between 19 and 20 from $3.50 to $4 per passenger. You can see we did not have any cruise ship passengers in fiscal year 21. And so then year to date, as far as collections, that would be from the cruise ships that started returning really in October. I think we had one the last day of September, but October of this year going forward. And that dollar amount is what we have collected, not what necessarily the revenue is based on passengers. So I think we're still going to hit our budget number with the cruise ship revenues. Next year, right now, I have a little over $1 million, which you can see is a considerable increase. And so I wanted to provide a little more detail of how I came up with that number. And again, as things change, this is probably the number I'm going to look at most closely. As we work on the harbor's budget. Again, the wharfage fee is $5 per passenger, where that 2019 number, it was $3.50 per passenger. So what I did is I looked at the cruise ship schedule. Right now, that's with the harbor, the number of ships scheduled, the passenger capacity of those ships, and then I have right now an occupancy assumption of 60%. That would also, in theory, factor in for cancellations. We usually try to reschedule them, but we do lose some cruise ships to cancellations. Then at the $5 per passenger rate, what the budget amount would be. And just as a comparison purpose, I did put at the very end the last non-COVID impacted year, the fiscal year 19 arrivals and the number of visitors on those ships. We have seen a considerable decrease in the occupancy rates so far on those ships. March showed signs that it was trending upwards. I don't know if that 60% number is going to stay the same as we get closer. I'm very interested to see what April and May numbers look like before I feel more confident about that number. But I just wanted to provide you with kind of how I came up with that number. And so with that is the conclusion of the presentation. I know that was a lot of information. But if there are any questions, again, the next meeting, my goal is to take these operating revenue numbers and then compare them against our initial thoughts as far as labor costs, contract services, and then our kind of O&M maintenance accounts to see what the net operating revenue before capital projects looks like, and particularly at the next meeting for the general fund and for the harbor fund. And so again, these numbers are all going to change, but I wanted to at least provide you with some of this information so you get a sense of kind of where we think we're going to be heading into next year as far as the budget process goes.
Any questions? That was awesome.
I'm always impressed every time we present
You
something.
miss the buckets. I don't miss the buckets.
No. Matt, thank you very
That
much.
was fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay. We have the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mayor. For the consent calendar tonight, we have item number 1, approval of minutes from April 5th, 2022 regular council meeting. Approval of disbursements from March 28th, 2022 through April 8th, 2022, totaling $1,104,305.54. Item 3, we have a resolution of support for the LGBTQ rights and inclusion. We are asking council to adopt a resolution of support for LGBTQ rights and inclusion. That's all we have on the consent calendar.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve consent calendar items 1 through 3.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, Mayor Marshall, there is a comment that we received regarding item 3.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay.
The e-comment is from Jim Lujohan. Thank you for taking on this action, especially at a time when we see so much effort around the nation to cast LGBTQIA people in a bad light.
Oh, thank you, Jim.
Aw.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Call for the vote. We have to do it. How are we doing it these days?
I believe we're still doing a verbal.
Okay,
a
go
vote.
ahead.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, who was the second on that?
Yesenia.
Okay, Councilmember Cassidy,
Aye.
Councilmember De La Rosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Lavelle,
Aye.
Councilmember Ponce,
Aye.
Mayor Marshall.
Aye.
Thank you guys for approving 3.
Of course. And item number 4.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 4 under general business is a first extension of CR&R's franchise and lease agreement. As we indicated to council, the initial 10-year agreement with CR&R expires on June 30th, 2023. We have a deadline of July 1st to give them a 12-month notice if it's our intent to go forward with the extension. If not, then staff, we would have to get on the ball preparing specs to go out for bid. So having looked at this and having looked at the climate and the environment that we're currently in, we are asking for approval of the first extension of the franchise and lease agreement with CR&R Incorporated for solid waste, recyclables, green waste, C&D and debris box collection services, and solid waste facility operation at Pebbly Beach Landfill. I would indicate I have had an opportunity to start diving into the contract a little bit. I have just for council's information, there is some issues that I do want to address with CR&R going forward to make sure that the original terms of the contract are met, with the understanding that we had a couple years of COVID in there. So,
Well, I don't know if you want to discuss it. I'll make a motion to approve the first extension.
I'll second.
I just have I just want to read my comments, if that's okay. I've been pretty vocal about the contract in general, certainly since the beginning of COVID. And after several conversations with City Manager Maestros, there are many questions raised that I feel strongly can and will be mitigated through those conversations and negotiations. And I know that our city manager has reported that he will bring back some solutions and answers to those questions. Some of those questions include the hours of operation, hazmat collection, reporting monthly and annually, sharing of recycling fees and reconciliation of those, retrofit of 125 golf carts to LP gas. So I'm very encouraged, and I'm also very encouraged of the ongoing discussions regarding the expansion of the landfill, because it's those active conversations and knowing that City Manager Maestros is currently having those. I do feel that CR&R is committed to our community, and so I have been very vocal about the contract, but I'm supportive of extending the 5-year lease because of the commitment in the conversations. So.
And I have a question for you. What is the 125 LP gas?
It's in the contract that, the initial contract that they had with us is that they would retrofit up to 125 golf carts operating within the city to LP gas during the term of their agreement. So not sure that some of that could have been done. The contract was initially negotiated the year before I came onto council, so I wasn't part of that. But so something may have happened in those early years that maybe I just hadn't, gotten myself acquainted with a contract at that time. But
I'm looking at Ole. Okay.
I did want to ask, I know that we have the lifespan set for January 1st, 2030, but if there's a way we can do like a halfway mark where we can check in on that and see how it is, if we need to make any modifications. And then I did also see on, it was section 6.10 about a W2E facility. Do we have any word on, are they looking into that, if it's feasible, or can we start talks about that?
On both of those issues, we've already started talks on that, okay. and we're hopeful that we can bring you something pretty soon about where we stand with the lifespan of the landfill and on that other issue. And I should comment, I believe we have a representative from CR&R available on tonight if there's any questions directly of her. But I feel good about the initial conversations I've had with them on these.
Great.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for the mystery woman? We good? Okay. All right, thanks. There's been a motion and a second.
Councilmember Cassidy?
Aye.
Councilmember De La Rosa?
Aye.
Councilmember Lavelle?
Aye.
Councilmember Ponce?
No.
Mayor Marshall?
Aye. Okay, item number 5. Bob Greenlaw, come on, Dave.
Okay, item number 5, and Bob's here to talk about this, and we'll be seeking authorization to procurement of supplies, equipment, and services for the upgrade of the Avalon wastewater treatment plant process air system for a number not to exceed the cost of $200,000.
Okay, so have some background information for the record here. The aeration system that provides the air for the biological processes at the wastewater treatment plant needs some repairs. Biological system requires a minimum airflow for normal operations. Without sufficient air, the biological process breaks down, which causes an upset at the plant, and which could lead to a process failure, and then we wouldn't be treating, and it would go straight out to the ocean. So the plant was originally built with 5 blowers, which provided multiple efficient operation levels to match the various flow needs during the year and time of day. One blower was removed from service in 2014, and a second one was removed just this month in March of 2022. Due to they were removed due to them being at the end of their service life. The 3 remaining blowers are not operating efficiently, and many of the operating combinations of the multiple blowers operating in tandem to meet those flow levels do not provide sufficient airflow to meet the peak operating conditions. The original aeration system design incorporated multiple redundancies so that if a piece of equipment failed or needed servicing, other equipment could provide a safe level of operations. That's why we had 5, and now we have 3, and it still marginally operates, so we need to do some work to it. The system developed problems during the peak flows over the previous quarter, and so a full assessment was completed by expert teams. It was found that the remaining blowers are near the end of their useful life. They've given us almost 50 years here, and need to be rebuilt or replaced as appropriate. With that finding, it became apparent that the system redundancy is becoming critically insufficient. A failure of the main blower that is the main one that we operate, and then we have 2 smaller ones right now, would require extraordinary process measures to complete operations. This is a particular concern during the peak summer flows that are now approaching. So the details of this proposal has 4 components. The first is to purchase 3 new blowers to replace 3 of the 5 existing blowers at an equipment cost of $89,818. The second is the programming of the integration of the blowers to the command and control infrastructure of the plant at a cost of $12,895. So that allows us to operate these through our SCADA system. And third is the installation of new actuators for automatic control of airflow at the equipment cost of $21,479.82. The fourth is the installation of the equipment, including the electrical and mechanical trades that would install these. Some of the work will be completed by Montrose or city staff, but for work that will require outside forces, a contingency of $75,000 is requested. The estimated total cost is $199,192.82, rounded up to $200,000 for the project. The project is currently part of the capital projects list for the plant. Capital project 2050012, if you look in our current year's budget, major sewer project, and that is for an array of capital projects on a prioritized basis. There's sufficient funding remaining in that project to allocate to the project. The work is exempt from the requirements of a public works project by the Public Contract Code and also the Avalon Municipal Code Section 3-4.201D5 at its sewer maintenance work at the city-owned wastewater treatment plant. So as previously stated, the project will be completed by Montrose and city staff as the resources are available. These forces will be supplemented with licensed contractors through competitive proposals as necessary to facilitate a timely and effective delivery of the project. So that's that $75,000 piece. So for each of those components, the procurement policies of the Avalon Municipal Code are applied for that procurement. So we have a request. That's the end of my presentation, and we have a request to move ahead.
Okay. Comments or just make a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the procurement of supplies, equipment, and services for the upgrade to the Avalon wastewater treatment plant process air system for a not-to-exceed cost of $200,000.
I'll second.
Go ahead, Michael. Okay, call for the vote.
Councilmember Cassidy?
Aye.
Councilmember De La Rosa?
Aye.
Councilmember Lavelle?
Aye.
Councilmember Ponce?
Aye.
Mayor Marshall?
Aye.
All ayes. And for the record, I'd like to make known that the vote count for item 4 was 4 ayes, 1 no, Ponce.
Yes. Okay. Going to be going into closed session.
At this time, yes, Mayor, Council, we have a closed session scheduled conference with labor negotiator regarding Avalon Harbor Employee Association, Avalon Municipal Employees Association, International Association of Firefighters, Local 2295, unrepresented confidential employees, and management employees.
Okay. Well, I don't know how long we'll be there, but so good night, Tony, if we don't catch you on the back end.
I'm trying not to.
We're back from closed session, and there's no reportable action.
Night, Tony.
Meeting adjourned.
Okay, good night, guys.
Good night.